Benedict, let's get on and talk about other issues. Yvette Cooper, Home Secretary, planning to lock up and deport more illegal migrants. This is the report. This is their big push today. Of course, we've been seeing all these numbers of people coming over on the illegal boats, and we got, you know, again, we're in the same sort of territory as we were for last year, which wasn't the highest year. The year 2022 was the highest year for the number of people coming here to illegally. The number of migrants crossing the Channel since the election is 5,720. We're told it's 14% lower than the same period last year, over 6,500, and it's more than, well, almost half lower than the same period in 2022. But again, that's just not going to fly with most people, because at the end of the day, it's going to be tens of thousands of people who are going to be coming to this country who we don't know who they are, throwing their passport, inviting aged men, getting on a dinghy, paying someone $3,000 in Calais to come over here illegally. We don't want those people here. Now, how do we get rid of them? Bearing in mind, by the way, there are also, I think, estimates, something like 1.5 million people are living here illegally, many who arrived legally, a tourist visa, a student visa, stayed over. Now, those people still should also be deported. Perhaps we're not quite as scared of those people as we are by people who've thrown their passports in the Channel and are arriving using the people smugglers. But they're claiming they've got a plan to remove more than 14,500 illegal migrants in the next 6 months. That's higher than any time since 2018. That's when Theresa May was Prime Minister. Remember those happy days. That was, though, it turns out, was actually a low mark. That's like the lowest year for 20 years. They're going to create 300 extra places at immigration removal centres to be detained before being deported. Does any of this, though, even if they could do it, does any of this touch the sides of the sort of deportation numbers we actually need?
No, because it needs to be in the hundreds of thousands. That's the reality. And I understand that the capacity is perhaps not there and they need to get that capacity up to speed, but I don't believe that there is the will to get it up to those levels, especially seeing as the numbers coming in are going to stay at more or less a constant. Now, they've dropped slightly because fewer people are coming from Albania, because the ones that wanted to come here are already here, and fewer people are coming from Afghanistan, again, because the initial influx has already gone.
But we did deport a lot back to Albania.
Yeah, but we had a specific agreement with Albania, and there are very good reasons for that. But there is going to be an uptick next year when the people fleeing Sudan are going to arrive. So, you know, and also what's going on in the Sahel. So in the next 2 years, it's not going to go down, the numbers of people coming across. So it's going to be sort of at a constant, and 14,000 a year, 6 months, it's not enough. And there are all going to be all kinds of legal difficulties. There's nothing to stop those people from just travelling across Europe again and paying another people smuggler. But, oh, no, I forget, we're smashing the gangs. Do not trust for a second that we will smash a single gang, because we have not, you know, these are not people who trade solely in people. This is the mafia. These are international criminals who smuggle everything, and they are very hardened. They're very deeply ingrained into many Western societies, have been for decades. Ask the Italian government how easy it is to tackle the gangs. It's very difficult. They start blowing up politicians and things if you get too close. These are the same people. Maybe a lot of them now are Albanians, Kurds, rather than Italians, but they're the same organisations. So it's a really nice thing to say, yes, we're going to smash the gangs, but if we could do that, they would have been smashed a long time now, because they've been bringing misery to the streets of this country for decades.
The man or woman who's supposed to be in charge, the commander of this new border force, the guy who was in the job resigned, like literally at no notice at all, which is telling. Obviously, didn't feel that things were going to be going his way, and hasn't been replaced. I think we've gone, 45 days or more without anyone actually in this role, which is apparently one of the key issues, and we know it's one of the key issues, and it is a key issue for Labour voters, not perhaps the sort of the 24-year-old living in Cambridge, or some of the people in Islington, the lawyers, but it's a very big issue for a lot of Labour voters in many towns and cities across the country who do live with the impact of this. And I thought it was very telling what David Davis, who we spoke to earlier, the former Brexit secretary, said, when people say, like, oh, well, we just need to talk to Europe about this, all this Keir Starmer, like, we're just going to have a chat with Emmanuel Macron, as if he wants to help us. But when they've got crisis, you go to Paris, you go to anywhere around Europe now, there are so many people sleeping on the streets who are clearly migrants.
Who have no business being in those countries.
No business being in the country. They can't do anything about it. The migrant crime is off the scale in places like France, Sweden, Germany, Austria, Italy. And I'm sorry, it's happening everywhere.
It is.
This is a major issue. This has had a huge impact on elections, European elections, and indeed, what's happened in the parliamentary elections.
You want the real
in
far
France.
right? That's how you get the real far right. People talk about the far right in this country. It does not come close to what the actual far right looks like. I know The Guardian is obsessed with the idea that at any moment 100,000 white people are about to goose step down to the
They think
Parliament
we're
Square.
far right.
Yeah, but actually look at what's happening in Germany. Far right rallies where, for very obvious reasons, it's far less politically and socially acceptable to be far right. People are emboldened there in a way that they haven't been for decades, and this is what happens if you don't address the issues.
But again, saying we don't think there should be tens and tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of foreign migrants illegally arrived, living on the streets or involved in high crime, and often from cultures, and again, everyone gets upset about this reality, often from cultures where they do not treat people like Michael Arcolo, who's gay, or people like me as equals, and think that, frankly, if you're not fully covered from head to toe, then, frankly, they can touch you.
And have some rather questionable opinions on Jews. But, let's not get onto that again.
But again, no one's allowed to say that and not be shouted at bigger. Well, we're going to say it, and I know, my colleague Alex Phillips pointing stuff out, and she gets accused of throw the R word. Well, is what someone's saying true, or is it not true? That's all that matters. If all these people, these liberal lefty lawyers, who are under the illusion that everybody coming from North Africa and the Middle East and Pakistan and Bangladesh share their values and social norms. I mean, they're stark staring insane.
I mean, it's a really good sort of test of the average liberal metropolitan is to ask them how many different ethnicities are there in Pakistan and what cultures do they follow. They don't know. They just think that there is Pakistan and that they're all the same.
They've heard of Imran Khan.
Yeah, and that ultimately, if you just transplant a Pakistani person into Britain, they can just become British magically like that. They don't know about different cultures, and they're not interested in finding out about these other cultures. They just assume
as I've said a million times, I don't believe in multiculturalism. No issue with multiracialism, multi-ethnicity. Couldn't care less. Multiculturalism, I'm absolutely opposed to, because I think we should live in the best possible culture ever, that is Western liberal culture.
Which is why they move here, and then are told, oh, it's fine, you don't need to adopt these things. You just keep the backwards tendencies that has kept your country in such a state that you wanted to leave.
And it is backwards, because an awful lot of these cultures are medieval in terms of their brutality, their attitudes to equality for gay people, for women. I mean, for me, that's the biggest concern for women. But I wouldn't go and live in a country like Saudi Arabia because I wouldn't have equal rights, so I wouldn't go and live there. But if I did if I was foolish enough to go and live somewhere like that, I would have to accept the norms, the dress codes and the behaviour there, which is why I would last approximately 9 seconds.
But again, this is why when we talk about issues in the black community, the Muslim community, it's a nonsense. How on earth can you compare a Somali to a Ghanaian and actually explain away the reasons why one group is far more involved in crime in this country than the other? They're different cultures, and they are less easily or better able to assimilate into other Western cultures based on their history. But this is, of course, the liberal attitude, is to go, black people are suffering and they're all the same. Afro-Caribbeans are the same as Africans, and no question should be asked, when it's clearly not true. And again, within Pakistan, there are some groups that assimilate into British society very easily. There are others that don't. They come from the same country. The average sort of Metropolitan Times Guardian reading person goes, that's all the same, and it's all fine, and it can be explained away because America is a melting pot and we live downstream of America, so it must be fine.
And there's that really good restaurant down the road, isn't it? Multiculturalism wonderful. Genuinely, that's what it comes down to. It really is absurd, isn't it?